Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Zoom mini series where we interview various members of our team from D4I, where our questions are geared to show you what kind of work we do for data governance and Indigenous data sovereignty. Here we have Joe, if you could introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Joseph Yracheta. I'm the Vice President and Executive Director of the Native Biodata Consortium, which is housed here on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation in Eagle Butte, South Dakota. We're the first and only 501c3 sample and data repository in the country that is Indigenous controlled, Indigenous authorized, and Indigenous led.
Perfect. So to get us started, how would you describe Indigenous data sovereignty to a tribal community member who doesn't necessarily spend a lot of time thinking about data sovereignty and data governance?
So the way I would describe Indigenous data sovereignty is that we understand that this was our homeland for time immemorial. And we understand issues about language preservation and language security, and trying to avoid exploitation. We understand about the Indian Child Welfare Act and the foster care system of keeping our children with our communities and our families. We understand about land use, taxes, and money derived from the land. This is the same issue because today, rather than being physical, tangible things like children or land, um, or cultural artifacts, this data is now something that the world wants um, to develop and exploit into products that are not for us, and we won't benefit from the monetary part, but they also are seeking to use it or take it away from us so that they can plan further destruction of tribal communities, tribal possessions, and tribal domestic dependent nations. And you've heard this at least since the 90s that we are immigrants too. You know, we came across the Bering Strait and all these other kinds of nonsenses. This is how data is used against us. They're saying that because they have evidence through their science, through their research that we came from somewhere else, they seek to diminish us. And they will do that for everything, especially nowadays with rare earth minerals like lithium, for contestations like water rights, like the Navajo have. We saw it just recently in 2017 with foster care. They're saying that the kids are being abused by us, so they should go to good white families. All of those things are part of Indigenous data sovereignty.
So, members of our team come from various training backgrounds. So, what does it mean to you to do this type of work with your training?
So I've been trained as a general biologist, and I've been working mostly in biomedical research since 1990. I've done everything from mental health pharmaceutics like Prozac before Prozac was out on the market doing safety testing. I did surgery transplant, making sure that drugs and drug regimens are appropriate for non-white populations. I did lots of work in pharmacogenomics and how drugs are not really servicing Native American communities in Alaska, Montana, or Washington State. And now I'm the director here at Native Bio. And even though I manage some of the research projects, I'm not at the bench anymore. I'm mostly trying to create networks and funding streams so that all of you young researchers will have somewhere to go work instead of working at a university. Hopefully, you'll either be working on your reservation or at least working on someone's reservation for your tribe and for Native people. And so that's what my role is today is to build the network for us to become free.
Perfect. So, from this growing network of individuals who are working towards upholding Indigenous data sovereignty, what would you say is an aspect of this that isn't explored enough?
Uh, one aspect is the unity that we should have across the hemisphere. Um, so we see this really, really clearly in the Pacific. So for Polynesian people, they're in New Zealand, they're in Hawaii, they're in Samoa, they're in French Polynesia, they're in Easter Island. And because they're in somebody else's jurisdiction, their resources are getting taken away. And they have the advantage of speaking the same language and coming from the same culture. So they have some amount of unity in that regard in terms of research, data, and intellectual property, but they keep getting thwarted by these world governments that say they're a conquered people. It's less evident here in the Americas, but it shouldn't be. We have NAFTA and CAFTA that basically gave the economic trading rights to Canada, the United States, and Mexico, leaving out indigenous people entirely. So basically, NAFTA and CAFTA were trying to copy the EU's program of unification, where EU can trade from Sweden all the way down to Italy, if they wanted to, but that came with also moving people and labor without any restrictions. Like if you're in Sweden, you can take a train all the way to Italy and never have to go through a border crossing. That is not true in the Americas. In the Americas, indigenous people are locked and tied to their colonial governments and aren't truly free, even though most of the trade, most of the products, most of the ideas, most of the science, most of the research came from us. And that's the thing that's not being talked about, is that this is the probably the longest and the largest segregation of people from the whole world. So we're basically a large island nation like Hawaii, but instead we've been by ourselves for a very long time across two continents, um, creating, and all by ourselves, creating all kinds of technologies, plant medicines, agricultural systems, ways of governance that have been basically stolen from us. And our power and our wealth keeps diminishing while the settlers keep pretending that we don't exist.
Mm. Yeah, when I think about like practices that we have developed through the time spent on this land, one that comes to mind is like the idea of controlled wildfires, like controlled fires to basically provide nutrition back to the ground, regrow parts of the land. Now that's being like adopted by agencies that aren't indigenous in nature in California. So yeah. So with that, we hope that the questions that Joe has answered provides an idea of what Indigenous data sovereignty is about. If you have an interest in learning more about what we do here at D4I and just the overall idea of Indigenous data sovereignty and how to uphold it, we have a fair amount of resources in our links below that you can check out. We also have a few YouTube videos that also describe our project and what we've done for tribal communities and research. So give that a go. Thank you so much, Joe, for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.